So if you're ready, creeps, fasten your drool cups and hold on to your vomit bags. We're going to the movies! Frights, camera, action!
Okay. Show me.
Show some fucking respect for the dead, will ya?
There they are. They were inside you the whole time. You did have guts.
There's something out there waiting for us.
I have seen the dark shadows moving in the woods.
It's all true. The undead surround me.
There'll be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
Welcome to All Guts No Glory, a horror review show where we cover everything from the bad seed to bad moon. And today I'm looking at Friday the 13th Part 3. By now these intros are going to start to blend together since these movies are basically clones of each other with minor differences. What exactly are those differences when it comes to Part 3? Well, Steve Miner is still directing, but this time his writers are a husband and wife duo named Karl Watson and Martin Kidrosser. The latter of whom would go on to be a script supervisor for a shitload of classic movies. Jason is played by a new actor, British trapeze artist and stuntman Richard Brooker, who when he asked for direction on how he should play Jason was told to base him on Jaws lurking in the background.
I was actually working as a stuntman in LA. My background is actually circus. I've spent most of my life as a flying trapeze artist in the circus.
He looked like the boogeyman. He looked creepy and scary in the way that Richard Brooker had him moving.
There's a certain malevolent intelligence to the character in 3 that's not seen in the other movies per se.
I didn't get any direction from Steve Miner at all, actually. He actually came to me and said, you know, don't ever come to me and ask me what your motivation is, because you have no motivation. You're just a mindless killer and you just go out and kill. You're like the living version of Jaws.
The creative choice that Steve Miner made to keep Jason lurking and unseen, I think was just a masterful creative choice that added to the suspense.
Steve knew that it was better to try to keep Jason kind of in the background as a shadowy figure, as opposed to, you know, just turning around and having Jason stand there. And he kept that going throughout the whole movie.
There's a new crop of teenagers and a new final girl named Chris Higgins replacing Ginny from the last movie. The original script saw her returning and having Jason hunted down in a hospital, which once again ends up being used in a Halloween movie. So Steve Miner's back, there's a new final girl, a new Jason. That's about it, I'm probably not missing anything else. Oh yeah, this movie's in 3D. And it was the movie that kicked off the 80s 3D craze. While 3D movies are nothing new, they had a big heyday in the 1950s, but this was the first 3D Paramount movie since 1954, and this movie was the first to use the new technology. And with the new technology comes trial and error, which this production had in spades.
Well, it was also the first movie with the 3D camera, which was kind of exciting. I mean, it was a very unusual camera.
This was the lens that was used to shoot Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. As you can see, it's really lightweight and handheld, and it permitted you to really make a horror movie the way other horror movies are made. We could do things like shoot long lenses with it, we could do rack focuses with it. Steve Miner did wonderful work with Jerry File by shooting the whole picture on a moving Lumicrane.
The 3D was very difficult. It was a brand new process. No one had ever used it before.
Today, 3D, I'm sure, has come much farther and is a lot easier to shoot. Back then, it would take hours to set up a shot.
There was a lot of time to just, as an actor, to just sit around and wait. That's what we did, mostly.
And there was always something going wrong with it.
We were using, at the time, which was very new, a Lumicrane. And then the first run they did down the track, it collapsed, and the whole thing went over. So, you know, we had to start all over again.
And I remember the guy who ran it, he showed up one day with a shirt that said, "I hate the Luma."
However, I find the 3D distracting. The less said about it, the better. Instead, let's be like Jason and finally put on our hockey mask and get this party started. Friday the 13th Part 3 begins with a warning that the intro isn't in 3D, and then we get another 5-minute intro that's just the last movie's ending for the love of Christ. Once that's over, we see an injured Jason drag himself into the next movie. Once the movie properly starts, we get the opening credits complete with the Friday the 13th disco theme that has since become one of the most popular pieces of music from the franchise.
The creative force behind the film's now famous disco theme was renowned music producer Michael Zager, who shared credit with a fictional band that he named Hot Ice.
Not sure if disco was dead, but it was still around. Disco really never goes away anyway. Once you hear it, you start to move. You feel the groove, I guess. You know, I had no idea that this would become such a huge and popular thing. For example, in all the discos, gay clubs. I understand there's actually a tribute band who plays that particular piece live, which astounds people. People just come to me like, I just really love that tune. Get yourself a little drum machine and you're on your way.
Once we get past the flashback and the disco opening credits, we get another sort of intro where we meet two expendable characters, Harold and Edna, who run the Crystal Lake Variety Store. Harold is played by Steve Susskind, who was one of Al Bundy's no-man buddies on Married with Children.
Hey, guys. Thanks for helping me out in the yard.
Hey, glad to help out.
No problem.
Before, Al.
Well, you know.
I mean, come on, nice guy like you.
I hope my aerobics didn't disturb your yard work.
No.
Didn't even notice you.
Well, I'll just go wash up then.
Thanks, Al. Well, I hear Louise calling.
Yeah, Sheila's always ready. Maybe I won't remember what she looks like.
Fanny should still be in bed. Oh, well, I guess I can pretend the crumbs are sand and we're at the beach. Yeah.
And Edna is played by Sherry Morgan, who at the time was married to David Caruso. You know, this guy.
A man was stabbed to death 4 days ago in an empty house, but no one notices.
First murder on the books in this part of town. Not what you bargain for when you buy your chunk of the American dream.
And then your dream becomes a nightmare.
There's a new crop of horny teenagers at Crystal Lake, and Jason is on the loose. This is gonna be like sex at a campground. Fucking intense. Harold and Edna don't have a happy marriage.
God damn it, Harold! I spent all day yesterday washing your clothes. Look what you're doing to them. You know I work very hard around here trying to keep up with you and all your sloppy habits. And I get no help from you at all.
You're now Tony DeMartini.
She yelled at him within a millisecond of him fucking up like she has a nagging bitch wife technology implanted in her head. Anyway, after belittling her husband, she watches the news featuring a cameo from director Steve Miner, where they talk about the events of the previous movie, which took place the day before. Meanwhile, Harold, the henpecked husband, gets his pleasures where he can, feeding his fish, taking care of rabbits, sampling store products, and getting so scared by a 3D snake that he has to run to the toilet where he does a little toilet drinking. Also, kudos to Clive Smith, the sound effects guy who gave us these realistic sounds. Harold straight up pulls up his pants without wiping his fucking ass and walks right into Jason, who kills him with a cleaver to the chest. Not far behind him is Edna, who goes looking for someone to nag, but runs into Jason, who's a full-blown MGTOW and doesn't put up with her shit, killing her with a sewing needle that goes through the back of her head and out of her mouth. After those two are gone, we cut to Sunday the 15th and meet this movie's new crop of teens. It's the usual suspects. There's the main girl, Chris Higgins, played by Dana Kimmel, who got the role because Steve Miner liked her performance in Sweet 16, another slasher movie.
I hope they caught the creep. Oh, they did. And then they hanged him.
Then there's the horny couple, Andy and Debbie, who are introduced with some meta commentary.
Sex, sex, sex. You guys are getting boring, you know that?
What would a weekend in the country be without sex?
And after Ned and Ted, we get our third prankster of the series, Jed. Just kidding, he has a far more embarrassing name.
Look, Shelly, you're my roommate and I like you. Most of the time. But you gotta quit doing those things.
He's also arguably the saddest of the prankster characters. He says seriously depressing shit like this.
Don't embarrass me. Just relax. Be yourself.
Would you be yourself if you look like this?
I always wonder how people get casted for roles where their looks or their weight are the butt of the joke. In the case of Larry Zerner, who plays Shelley, he was literally discovered walking down the street.
Actor Larry Zerner was literally approached on the street by the film screenwriters who thought he was perfect for the role of the overweight, insecure prankster.
Shelley was unattractive and heavy, and he just had very poor self-esteem. So he thought that if he had these little tricks, that would bring attention to him, which would make people like him. He's a little misguided that way.
The four characters we met already are at this house to pick up Shelley's date, and I say that loosely. The series' first Latina, Vera Sanchez, played by Catherine Parks, who is absolutely not a Latina and whose most notable other roles in Weekend at Bernie's. That wacky 80s comedy about two guys pretending their dead boss Bernie is still alive so they can party it up at his mansion.
Oh, hi, Bernie! See you at the party tonight!
Catherine Parks played Tina, Bernie's girlfriend who has sex with him not knowing he's been dead for like 8 hours.
Did everything go okay up there?
Never been better.
Oh, good. How do you like that? Guy gets laid more dead than I do alive.
No, she couldn't have. He couldn't have.
I get yelled at when I just lay there.
Meaning in my eyes, she'd rather fuck a dead guy than Shelley. She has an awkward introduction to Shelley before they run back to the car thinking it's on fire and run into two characters that are actually fresh in the Friday the 13th lore, the stoner couple, Chuck and Chili. There's been characters smoking weed throughout these movies, but these two are the first to be full-on potheads. Thanks to them, everybody has to try and eat their stash when they think the cops are pulling them over. It's here we also find out Debbie is pregnant.
I'm driving. Carl!
No way! We're pregnant, remember?
It turns out the cops don't give a shit about some pot-smoking teenagers because they're on their way to Harold and Edna's store having just discovered their bodies. Distracted by the crime scene, Chris almost runs over this fucking wackadoo who's asleep in the middle of the road. He's this movie's version of Crazy Ralph since they stupidly killed Crazy Ralph in part 2. He has none of Ralph's charm though, he just shows the kids an eyeball and scares them off. Fun fact though, David Wiley, who plays this crazy derelict, played the guest of honor Judge Carter in that crazy fucking disgustingly awesome movie Society.
Effective, efficient,
Oh.
and to say the very least, entertaining. I do love the smell of the hunt and the taste of the shunt.
The kids arrive at Higgins Haven, Chris Higgins' family estate, since this movie doesn't take place at Crystal Lake, but rather at a nearby property. Everything in Higgins Haven, including the house, the barn, and the lake, was a set completely built from scratch.
It was filmed at a ranch in Saugus, California. They actually built the set there, so everything was in one location. They built a little lake, they built the barn, they built the house, and so everything was done right there.
Shooting was put off for a day or so because there was an infestation of bees around.
There were rattlesnakes everywhere. And some of the grips had guns, and then they'd hear this gun going off because they were shooting rattlesnakes.
Here we are on the set of Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. Over here is the house that we used. That unfortunately burned about a year ago, but the fireplace is still there. But this house was built just for us.
When they arrive, Chris runs into her love interest, Rick, who she used to date or fool around with 2 years ago before some traumatizing incident they keep alluding to. They rekindle their romance as Shelley continues to make me feel bad for him. He plays a prank later on that I thought was pretty good, but everyone dogs on him.
Don't look at him. Let's just get the hell out of here.
We heard screaming. Oh my God. Oh, is he dead? Don't touch him, man.
Don't move him.
You
creep.
Oh my.
Get up. I guess I fooled you, huh?
Sure.
Chris, leave him alone. He doesn't know any better.
It was a joke. It was just a joke. I didn't mean to.
You never mean to.
Oh, I gotta get out of here.
Asshole.
Vera and Shelley borrow Rick's punch buggy. Oh shit, I'm sorry, I gotta stop doing that. To take a little trip to the store where I think the clerk is trying to be racist to Vera.
We don't accept no food stamps.
The implication being that the clerk thinks she's poor because she's Hispanic. But then she asked Shelley for money, meaning she really didn't have any, so the racist clerk is right? Shelley throws her the wallet, something that took a long ass time to film since the 3D technology was in its infancy and everything had to be exact.
The first thing we shot was the scene at the store, and they ended up basically throwing that away because it was really just a test to see if it could be done, and then they revised it and we came back a week later and then we did it.
You had to do it exactly the way you were directed or the 3D effect wouldn't turn out. So it was very precise.
Oftentimes we would do additional takes just because there were technical issues. So as an actor, that was a little frustrating.
You weren't really worried so much about your acting skills as much as could you get that yo-yo to go right in the lens. That was more important than anything else.
When we're doing takes, you know, I'm like throwing the wallet at the camera in the store. It's just take after take as you have to hit right to the camera, otherwise it doesn't work. So things did take more takes than usual because they had to be perfectly right into the camera.
When the wallet lands on the floor, Vera is accosted by Fox, a local biker and troublemaker who's soon joined by her compadres, Ali and Loco. They bully Shelley and Vera, and things get worse when Shelley accidentally backs into their bikes, causing Ali to break the windshield in the driver's window with a chain. Shelley shows he's got balls when he circles back around and runs over Ali's bike. When they get back, Vera actually seems impressed. Rick is pissed though and threatens to leave until Chris offers him some of that sweet, sweet final girl lovin'. Meanwhile, the bikers from the store easily find Higgins Haven and start messing around. In order to get even, they siphon gas from Chris's van with the intention of using it to burn down the barn, which is definitely a disproportionate response. Meanwhile, as the guys siphon gas, Fox swings on the hay bale rope. She suddenly disappears from view, and when Loco finally finds her, she's stuck to a beam via a pitchfork in her neck. Before he can react, Loco is stuck through the gut with a pitchfork, killing him. Every time I watch this death scene, I'm hoping Jason is going to use the pitchfork to fling Loco over his shoulder like he would do in later movies. But no such luck since Jason is still human at this point. Ali goes looking for his friends, but he gets a diving crossbody from Loco before he gets in a fight with Jason and gets his shit rocked. For some reason, despite there being numerous weapons around Jason, he decides to spare his life.
The other two members of the gang, Fox and Ali, played by Gloria Charles and Nick Savage, were great, and I think that, very much like myself, I don't think that was their natural role.
Then they threw the condom thingy.
Is this your rubber?
I was more embarrassed than the other character was supposed to be about someone talking about a condom.
One of my favorite shots of the movie is when we are going to siphon the gas out of the van. They had that great shot of Tracy Savage that goes basically from her behind to me. I love the idea of siphoning gas with a lit cigarette.
It's amazing. The barn's still here. Right above is actually where my little buddy was swinging back and forth. The swinging part was the scariest part for me because they had this harness on me inside my pants that were way too tight. I was absolutely afraid of heights. And I took this as an opportunity for me to just face that fear and say,
This feels good!
amazing. That's where I was pitchforked.
The stunt coordinator had hooked her up on a wire support to the rafters. So she was already in position.
The fork was actually a real pitchfork, but had the two prongs in the center were collapsible. And the hard part was for me to not giggle while I was hanging there.
Same thing for the one biker guy who Jason stabs. And we cut off the tangs in the back and had that welded to a plate, put that on his back.
We needed to get the impact of the pitchfork and then be certain that the handle was sticking at the direct point of the camera. I didn't put up a struggle. I just said, okay, it's my turn.
As night falls, Rick and Chris have a quiet moment in the woods where Chris tells Rick the story she's been hinting at throughout the movie. 2 years earlier, she got in a fight with her parents and ran off into the woods where she was attacked by Jason. Once Jason got a hold of her, she blacked out and doesn't remember the rest. Honestly, this shit is really stupid. First of all, this has no bearing on the story. She's not on a revenge mission looking for Jason. She's not secretly related to Jason. She got attacked by him and now he's killing people in her barn. That's it. Second of all, this is a flashback to 2 years ago, and Jason is bald, even though chronologically 2 days ago Jason had long red hair and wore a bag over his head. Lastly, for some reason, Jason gets a hold of her, and once he's got her, he lets her live. He just sees her pass out and says, "Ah, fuck it, that's enough," and walks away, content with the day's work. This is really, really dumb, and it could have been even dumber because originally Jason was going to rape her. Thankfully, someone said that would go too far, and we avoided Jason raping counselors for the next 10 movies.
I woke up, I was in my own bed. My parents have never said a word about it. They act as if the whole thing never happened, but it did.
So wait, she might have dreamed being attacked? That's even worse! Fuck this stupid shit, let's get back to the other characters. Shelly and Andy have a little juggling contest. When Andy leaves to go have sex, Shelly tries his luck with Vera and gets rejected in a way that hurts my soul.
Vera, you and I have gotten to know each other a little today, you know, and I like you. I like you a lot. I was thinking that maybe, you know, we could...
I don't think so. Look, I'm gonna go outside for a few minutes. And then when I get back in, we'll talk. Okay?
Sure. We'll talk. Bitch.
He deals with rejection the only way he knows how, by pulling pranks. This time somehow beating Vera to the lake and then grabbing her ankle while she's sitting on the dock of the bay. When he emerges, wait, what the fuck? Why is he wearing a hockey mask underwater? And how is he breathing under there? And what was the harpoon for? You're telling me this fucking weeble wobble held his breath and then swam up to Vera without her noticing while holding a spear? Well, that makes no goddamn sense. Anyway, logic aside, I thought it was a pretty good prank, but Vera's fucking pissed.
Damn it, Shelley! Why do you do these stupid things?
I have to.
No, you don't have to.
I just want you to like me.
I do like you. But not when you act like a jerk.
Being a jerk is better than being a nothing.
I never said you were nothing.
You don't have to say it. I could tell.
You're wrong. Shelley.
He gives her his usual hey there lonely boy shit, and I like Shelly, but at this point even I've had enough of the pity party. Anyway, Shelly wanders into the barn of death. The next time we see Jason, he's wearing Shelly's mask and carrying his harpoon gun, which he uses on Vera, killing the cutest chick in this movie 1 hour in. Gross, right in the fucking eyeball. This kill was accomplished by having the spear move along the cable almost like a zip line, so they could get it to go right towards the camera where they wanted it.
When that spirit comes out in the audience, everybody is reflexively avoiding that. I mean, that was awesome.
And there was a cable that was actually set up on the post that ran across to where she was standing. And I basically, the gun was rigged in such a way that I actually hooked the gun onto the cable and shot it. So it went straight down the cable.
And then we made an acrylic plate that fit over her eyeball.
Well, we had to do it in one take because the minute I hit the water, the little prosthetic was kind of spongy and it would absorb the water and just kind of slide off. But it was fun. It was really a lot of fun.
After killing Vera, Jason drops his gun like he's Jason Corleone and then just kind of wanders off, feeling pretty cool about his new mask. So now that Jason has his mask that he'll wear till the end of time, let's get some details on it. First of all, if you don't follow hockey, the masks they wear don't look like Jason's mask. Not even back in the 80s when they look like this. Jason's mask was actually custom made to be more cinematic.
One of the exciting things for me was the creation of Jason's mask. So we took a hockey mask and kind of customized it. We basically redesigned some of the ventilation holes. We created basically a new positive. From the positive, we made a big block rubber mold, and from that created what's called a buck, a heavy-duty cement wedge that on the top of it has the veneer of the hockey mask. At that point, using a real heavy-duty plastic, we did what's called vacuum forming. The vacuum forming draws apart, and we pull it out, and bang, we get Jason's mask.
As for who decided to put the hockey mask on Jason, there's about a dozen different stories. I doubt we'll ever know the truth.
We wanted something that would mask Jason, but at the same time, you know, it had to have a level of menace to it.
Stan Winston made a latex mask, and that's what I wore all the way through the movie. For some unknown reason, they didn't like the mask. They thought it looked too much like a monster. So they came up with the idea to cover it with a hockey mask.
It did kind of create this imposing, ominous character. I think the whole hockey mask thing was kind of a fluke. I'm not really sure how it came about.
God, who came up with the hockey mask? I don't really know.
My recollection was that, you know, multiple kinds of masks were brought around and so on and so forth, and then somebody brought the hockey mask and said, hockey mask, that's great.
I think it was Frank about the mask.
I'm sure it was Steven.
The one thing that everybody likes to take credit for is who put the hockey mask on Jason. And I must admit, and modesty, did I put the hockey mask on Jason?
Peter Schindler, Marty Becker, and Marty Sadoff were all hockey fans. And it was their idea to come up with a hockey mask to cover the face up.
Success has a lot of fathers, and everybody's willing to take a little bit of credit for it, I think, and maybe that's just the best.
Once we had the mask, we sort of said, "This is it. This is our signature piece. It's part of the iconography of what this movie is." And so, I wanted to make sure that we held on.
Andy and Debbie have some hammock sex, which is not very comfortable, I can tell you from experience.
Yeah, because hammocks aren't made for fat people.
Afterwards, Debbie is taking a shower while Andy handstands his way down the hallway to get them some beer. This being 1982 when pregnant women still drank and smoked. Andy runs into Jason and we get one of the coolest kills in this entire franchise when Jason cuts this dude in half vertically, nuts first. That's the stuff that nightmares are made of. It took 2 different special effects to create this memorable scene. The first is making a plaster cast of Andy's lower body for Jason to cut in half. The second was placing a piece of see-through plastic on the floor so the audience can get an upwards view of the carnage, showing Andy's point of view as Jason looms over him upside down. With Andy gone, we get a lot of gratuitous nudity as Debbie takes a long shower. She finally settles in the hammock and reads Fangoria, specifically an article about Tom Savini, whose work is promptly mimicked when we get a rehash of Kevin Bacon's death from the first movie. Debbie has blood drip on her from above and looks up to see her boyfriend split in half and stuffed in a ceiling beam. She's then killed with a machete through the chest from under the hammock. This is another scene that makes no goddamn sense. There's like 4 feet of space under a hammock. You could easily see if Jason's big 6'4" ass is under there. And second, her boyfriend is split in half. It should be raining blood on her, not 3 fucking patters from the guy's mouth. She should look like Carrie. But I gotta suspend my disbelief and just appreciate it for what it is. A nice little vicious death that was accomplished just like Kevin Bacon's.
I had no idea that Kevin Bacon and I have so much in common. Another 6-degree separation from Kevin Bacon. There you go. We died the same way. I was in makeup for 4 hours so that they could glue this torso to my neck. Then it was lighting for another 2 or 3 hours, all for a 3-second shot. And you had to get it right, because then if you don't, you got to do it all over again. So we were all kind of on pins and needles. I think that line
Would have been there already if some people didn't have to go to the bathroom every 5 minutes. That's what happens when you're pregnant.
was put in there just to make the teenage kids go, ooh. And then when I'm killed, make it even more grisly and awful. This is a pregnant woman.
Also, this wouldn't be actress Tracy Savage's only brush with a psycho killer. She retired from acting after this movie and became a journalist. A pretty good one at that. She eventually covered the O.J. Simpson trial. For you younglings out there, O.J. Simpson was a really famous football player and actor who allegedly murdered his ex-wife and her lover, and was eventually found not guilty in a highly publicized trial. Tracy Savage would be called on to testify when she got an early lead on a story about DNA evidence. But despite being threatened with jail time, she refused to reveal her sources, which is pretty fucking dope. To think there was a time when journalists had integrity. Good for you, Tracy Savage. The stoner duo that I really don't care about is still lounging around the house making popcorn and shit. Chuck goes downstairs to check the fuse box, and there's a cool shot where the lights turn on and Jason is standing right behind him. Jason then throws Chuck into the fuse box, electrocuting him to death. Meanwhile, upstairs, Shelly shows up with a slit throat.
Nice makeup job. Stop fooling around, man.
Kind of off topic, but I think they referenced Shelly's death in Superbad. I'm thinking a fan of horror movies saw fellow big boy Jonah Hill in the retro clothing and afro and thought of Shelly, then made reference to it in this dream sequence.
Don't do it, kid.
Never had a choice.
Fucking killed her! No!
You dick!
There was no scene filmed of Shelly actually getting his throat cut, so he just shows up and dies. Something Larry Zerner, who seems like a really cool dude in real life, has some reservations about.
There was never a death scene filmed for Shelley. It was always, that's exactly how it was in the script. I guess you're supposed to think, well, maybe he's joking again. Although, obviously the audience knows he's not joking because they've seen Jason kill a bunch of people. But I think I did the first take, and I think I heard some people chuckling. They were like, "That's bad." I was like, that all got into my head, and it's not the greatest death scene in the world.
Let me tell you, Larry, you did great, especially compared to Chili, who upon realizing Shelly's dead has about as much enthusiasm as the waiters who have to sing happy birthday for you at fucking Applebee's.
Shelly, enough is enough.
She runs around aimlessly saying Shelly's dead until she runs into Jason, who stabs her with a hot fire poker. An absolutely brutal death, and she reacts like she's got spicy diarrhea at worst. Just a little eh. Rick and Chris return to the cabin. Finding no one inside, Rick goes back outside to check around. When we see him again, Chris is calling for him, not knowing Jason has Rick in his clutches. Once she goes back inside, Jason gives one of the most infamous kills of this series, crushing Rick's skull until his eye pops out of a clearly fake head. But you know what? I'm not gonna knock it. There's dummies present in a bunch of classic horror movies. Fucking way she goes.
My favorite kill was probably Rick getting his eye popped out.
They did change the name of the character. In the original script, it was Derek. The reason why they changed it was at the end of the film when I go outside and I get killed, and she comes out and starts yelling the name out, that they wanted a monosyllabic name for her to say. You know, of course, the death that my character experienced, me getting my head crushed, was, I mean, it's historic.
I just remember when Paul's eyeball popped out, the whole audience just screamed at that one, and it was like, oh, that's great.
Technically, it was very hard to do, and it was one of those things you only had one chance of doing it, especially the 3D effect.
Well, in actuality, we did the Paul Kratka head twice. I was actually playing with a bunch of stuff, trying to figure out how to make and collapse the head properly. Anytime they wanted to, we could just pull the string and the eye would pop out of the socket, come straight down the line toward camera.
Chris, now alone in the house, starts finding the clues that there's been a massacre. Jason gives her the biggest clue when he tosses Rick through the window. Chris then runs upstairs and takes Jason on a tour of the Reading Rainbow.
She runs up the stairs and I'm at the bottom of the stairs and she tips the bookcase up on top of me. And I have to say that hurt like hell.
She ends up in a closet with the body of her friend who still has a knife in her back, so when Jason Jack Torrances his way through the door, he gets stabbed in the hand, which is exactly what happened in The Shining. It's like Jason didn't even pay attention to the movie. Chris goes on the attack and has Jason backing up until she finally stabs him in the leg. He has a great reaction though, taking the knife out and almost throwing it into her head. She jumps out a window, almost getting caught by Jason in the process, then smacks him in the head with a fucking log.
Ow, fucking bitch!
Before running to her car, but she only makes it to the bridge because, as we know, the biker siphoned the gas earlier. Jason catches up to her and she catches his arms in the window, which would have made sense with automatic windows, but not in that old shit heap. Plenty of time to move your hands while she's rolling them up. Jason headbutts his way out of that situation and we end up at the Barn of Death. Jason is looking for Chris, who's hanging from a beam above. When she can't hang on anymore, she accidentally gives Jason a bonsai drop. They get to the top part of the barn and Chris knocks Jason out with a shovel and then hangs him, which I gotta say is pretty fucking crafty. Out of all the final girls, I think Chris is so far the most formidable, so good for her. Unfortunately for her, Jason doesn't go down that easily and he just pulls himself up out of the noose, flashes his face to spook her, and then chases after her. Jason's unmasked look in this movie took 6 goddamn hours to accomplish, which is unbelievable. I never understood how actors can stand around for that long and not want to jump out of a fucking window from boredom.
I used to have to go in and do about 6, sometimes 7 hours of makeup. And it was 11 different appliances that they glued to my face, with the one eye lower down and certain teeth and the whole thing.
It was awfully painful. I mean, it had to be in that makeup for like 6 hours, and it was hot and sweaty. And you could see that he was very uncomfortable.
The bad part about it was that as soon as they'd finished, it was usually lunchtime, and I couldn't eat. So they used to give me tiger's milk through a straw so I would get some nourishment for the day.
Jason has Chris cornered and she's all but done for when motherfucking Ali makes the save. Fuck yeah, oh, he's dead. Keep in mind that Chris has never met any of these bikers, so she has no idea who this man is that distracted Jason and is currently getting hacked to death. But Chris doesn't depend on the kindness of strangers. Like I said, she's pretty formidable. So she uses the lucky distraction to grab an axe, and when Jason turns around, she gives him a fucking crack in both his head and his mask, the latter of which will become a part of Jason's look forever. Jason, presumably brain damaged, Frankenstein walks a few feet before collapsing. Chris goes out and canoes her way to the middle of the lake, a recurring thing in these movies that I don't quite get. Why not leave? They have 2 cars, the other one should work just fine. Or walk to town, or do some fucking thing. Anyway, she's out on the lake when she sees Jason in the window. She starts trying to kayak her ass on out of there, but she gets stuck on some driftwood with Jason fast approaching, except he's not. But Miss Voorhees is, gotcha bitch! Mrs. Voorhees' waterlogged corpse is another makeup effect that took a while to finish. So long, in fact, that Marilyn Poucher, the first assistant director, would fall asleep while they were applying it.
Steve Miner said that he wanted this creature to come out of the lake as if it was Mrs. Voorhees who had been down there for a while.
I have no idea how she got her body back, but it's a dream. They gave us Marilyn Butcher and just said, she's your guinea pig, use her. Little did she know what she was in for.
Once we started doing the makeup, it took about 6 hours. And I remember just sort of like falling asleep at certain times. It was just downright horrible because the water was just full of mosquito larvae and baby frogs and tadpoles. It was just like, oh, it's pretty nasty.
Covered in river slime and vinyl worms, and the rest is history.
So this is the actual mask that was done on my skin. It's a little, oh, here's a worm. Luckily, they were able to cut it off and we peeled it off because then I had to do the shot 3 more times.
As usual for these movies, the ending turns out to be a dream. In real life, Chris has gone full Sally Hardesty, taking into the back of a police car, babbling incoherently, apparently having had a nervous breakdown, which I really like. Turns out they had 3 endings they could have gone with. One which was only written and never shot, in which Ali saves the day and him and Chris walk off as the lone survivors, which is pretty cool. And another which they did shoot, where Jason decapitates Chris, ending the movie with no survivors. Another good ending.
We shot the ending twice. We actually did another ending. Dana Kimmel comes up the door of the house in a dream, and Jason comes through the front door and decapitates her.
And that was just an alternate ending that somewhere along the line somebody came up with. It was a very quick thing. It wasn't something that, you know, we knew was going to happen in advance. It was just kind of one of those added scenes that they said, let's just do this real quick.
It was only when we did the infamous alternate ending that you really started to see his face, and that's what they didn't like, and that's why the alternate ending was totally scrapped out of the movie.
So we made the mask, resculpted it, then they came up with the new dream sequence that Jason's at the house and she sees him at the top window and then comes down and busts through the door.
But I think I like this ending the best.
But what of the fate of traumatized Chris Higgins, who is never seen or heard from again?
I would say Chris has recovered, even though she drove away looking like she was losing it there in the back of the cop car. I think that she was strong enough to recover and move on. And that's the way I wanted to portray that character, as a survivor. And I think Chris did that.
And that's that. Wow. Crazy, man. I hope my breakdown's in 3D too. I think Friday the 13th Part 3 actually tried to branch out a little plot-wise. Sometimes it worked out like in the case of the bikers, and sometimes it didn't like in the case of the stoners. But I appreciate the effort, so I'll say 3 stars, which is below the original but above Part 2. As far as the effects go, I thought they were pretty good. Not the audacious 3D, but the practical effects like the 2 body casts, the spear on a wire, Fox and Loco getting pitchforked. They could have sat back on their laurels with the 3D gimmick, but they didn't. So 3 stars for the effects too. You know, I'm not really sure where I stand on these characters. Let's see, I liked Shelly, Vera, and Chris, though she was dragged down by the Jason PTSD plot. I thought Rick was alright, he didn't do much. And the stoners might as well have not existed. I think I'll give this 2.5 stars, same as the original. I actually think so far in this series, this movie has the best deaths, most likely because of increased budget. I liked all but 2 of the 12 deaths. Kill of the Week goes to Andy. In a movie full of great death scenes, Andy stands out big time. Kill of the Week goes to Chuck, who gets chucked into a fuse box. A nothing death for a nothing character. Best non-kill sequence will go to the ending, where Chris loses her mind. Usually the lone survivor walks off headstrong. Not the case here, which is interesting. As for my rating, I'll give the kills 3.5 stars, a half point above the original, which means the final grade for Friday the 13th Part 3 is a solid B, the same as the original. I'm rating these movies and even I didn't see that one coming. Now I'm gonna handstand my ass on out of here. Told you guys I could do it! Ah!
Oh god.